Welcome to Film and Page. I'm Dominic. So on Twitter a few days ago, I seen this really bizarre argument form about Blade Runner 2049. And it was a thread where a lot of people didn't like the movie and they were expressing how much they didn't like Blade Runner 2049. Now, if someone doesn't like a film, and I see it on Twitter, usually I just let it go. If it's a movie I like, usually I don't defend it. But in this case, I felt I had to jump in there and defend Blade Runner 2049. Because not only were they hating on the film, which is fine, if they don't like the movie, that's fine, but it was coupled up with this really weird false narrative about the movie. So let's get into it. So the argument was started by Razorfist. This is who started the thread. And if you don't know who Razorfist is, he's a pretty big YouTuber. And I know him because I've watched some of his Deep Space Nine reviews in the past. And I thought he did a pretty good job of reviewing some of the episodes he had picked out. And I've seen him on some live streams and stuff like that. So someone had retweeted this on Twitter, and that's how I saw the argument. So here's the argument. Blade Runner 2049 is a classic. You'll see. It will explode on other platforms after it leaves theaters. Bombs on Blu-ray, bombs on streaming. Are we ready to admit that letting the same reviewers that said Last Jedi was a classic color your perception of 2049 was a mistake? So this argument is that you really didn't like Blade Runner. And if you did like the movie, it's only because the marketing tricked you into thinking it was such a great movie that your brain couldn't comprehend the greatness of it. And that's why you really like it. But it's actually a terrible movie, like The Last Jedi, because apparently it's bad because the same critics who praised The Last Jedi praised Blade Runner 2049 as well. So this is the argument. So someone countered it with this. I didn't read or listen to any reviews of 2049. I saw the trailer and immediately wanted to see it. The cinematography, score, costumes, etc. I overall enjoyed it except Jared Leto's character. His portrayal of that character was boring. And so this is how Razorfist responds to this person. Whether you will admit it or not, and it is clear that you won't, your opinion of Blade Runner 2049 could not help but be colored by the marketing strategy, for that is what it was, to plant the narrative months in advance of release that it is a misunderstood masterpiece. So that's why the guy really liked, or the person really liked the movie. They didn't like it just because so he doesn't even take their statement at face value that they didn't watch any of the marketing or didn't keep up with any of the marketing. He just thinks they just can't admit it to themselves that they really were sucked in by the marketing, and the movie really is bad. It's a really weird argument. So I countered. Blade Runner 2049 is a classic, and I don't get the connection to The Last Jedi. That movie will be forever hated. History will be kind of one and not the other. So they kept comparing the two movies. But if you look at The Last Jedi, it's a really hated movie. Now, I know there are fans of that movie, and it does have, there are people that do like the movie, but there's a lot of people that really hate that movie. I myself, I did not like that movie when I seen it. And if you could look into the future, years from now, a decade from now, people will still be hating that movie. Just like when The Phantom Menace came out, Phantom Menace for the longest time was the most hated Star Wars movie up until The Last Jedi. People were like literally years and years and years, 10, 15, 20 years after the movie came out, there were still people doing videos picking the movie apart. And it'll be the same thing with The Last Jedi. Last Jedi came out in 2017. I still get recommended on by the YouTube algorithm videos that are only like a few months old to only a few days old, like hundreds of minutes long, about picking apart why The Last Jedi is a horrible movie and why this person hates it so much. So then Razorfist responded by quote tweeting me, Blade Runner bombed. 1 year later, it was in the top 10 for rentals, already a cult hit. Blade Runner 2049 bombed. 5 years later, seeing the problem? To be a cult film, you actually have to have a cult. So his argument here is that nobody cares about this movie now. It's been forgotten, and that was some of the arguments in the people that were agreeing with him in the comments of this thread going on about, nobody cares about Blade Runner 2049. It's been forgotten. Nobody's talking about it. even though he's talking about it now, and there's this big long thread about it on Twitter. It doesn't have any kind of a following. So I responded, what metric are you using to come to this conclusion? Like, how is he coming to this conclusion that there is no following for this film and that it bombed on DVD? And how big does a following have to be considered a cult? And he never did answer either one of those. So it's just like he's just pulling evidence straight out of his ass. So I responded with this. 1 year later, here's an article from IndieWire. Blade Runner 2049 finds second life on DVD and Blu-ray with over 21 million in 2018 sales. So it did. He's totally wrong about the DVD Blu-ray thing. It did not bomb on DVD and Blu-ray. It actually had found some legs in that market. It was a hit on DVD and Blu-ray. This is something I talked about in one of my past videos when I was talking about, will Dune succeed in a theater or not? And part of the thing I said in that video was, that the second life and the praise that Blade Runner 2049 got among critics and among average moviegoers as well, because it was a hit between both critics and people and average movie viewers, which you couldn't say the same thing about The Last Jedi if you go and look at Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, and IMDb and all that. You can't say the same thing about that with The Last Jedi that you can with Blade Runner 2049. So this was something that, gave everyone a lot of faith that he could handle Dune, the new Dune movie, Denis Villeneuve, because of how well he did with that Blade Runner film. So then I did a little poll on Twitter, and the poll went something like this. Is Blade Runner 2049 a classic or a bad film? So now it's going to be biased because a lot of people on my Twitter feed that I follow and follow me and stuff like that, there are a lot of Denis Villeneuve fans, so it's going to be biased. But is Blade Runner 2049 a classic or a bad film? It's a classic, 88.9%. It's a terrible film, 11.1%. And then I also posted this just to see what people who follow my channel thought. On Twitter the other day, I stumbled on this really strange thread where Blade Runner 2049 was getting a lot of hate. Now, I like the movie, and I really don't care if someone doesn't like the film. However, it was coupled with this argument that Blade Runner 2049 was a complete bomb in both theater and DVD Blu-ray release. Also, that the movie has already been forgotten and will never even reach cult status. So I pose the question here. Do you consider Blade Runner 2049 a classic or future classic? Do you think it has gained or will gain cult movie status? Do you think it is garbage that only critics praise and the general movie fans hate? Here are some of the responses. I like the film very much. Have various editions, NECA figures, art books, and posters. It only really impressed me after watching it several times. But doesn't this make it a good movie? Like a music album? The speed, the optics, the philosophy, the sound, everything inspires me. The other opinions are secondary. The main thing is that you like it yourself. A masterpiece that I think will be appreciated even more in the future. Thanks for your channel. Greetings from Germany. This person responded with, I'm pretty sure this movie broke records at the ancillary markets, i.e. DVDs and Blu-ray series and Blu-ray sales. In 2018, it was in the top 5 for the most purchased DVDs and Blu-rays in America. So that's why that argument was really, really flimsy and collapsed all their other arguments. Then there's this one. This movie is a masterpiece. And then it was one of my favorite films until Dune took its place. In my books, Blade Runner 2049 is indeed a classic and more than worthy sequel to Ridley Scott's very influential original. All of Villeneuve's filmography is hard for many of today's average moviegoers to get used to, given their steady diet of fast action and gratuitous, violence-filled cartoon fantasy movies. Also, there are a lot of trolls out there with nothing better to do with their presumably empty lives, just looking to get online rise from those who are passionate about anything well done. Frankly, best to ignore them. And then there is this person. You cannot make a sequel to a classic 30 years later and expect it to have the same impact on the audience. Blade Runner was a slow burner when it came out. Blade Runner 2049 might be as well. But I don't think it is unique enough to be remembered as a milestone. It is a really good movie, but we already saw a lot of cyberpunk stuff during the 80s. And that's a fair argument. And even I have to admit, I don't think it will ever reach the same status as the original because, I mean, whatever status it has, it is because of the original, because it's a sequel to the original. Then there's this one. Blade Runner 2049 is a masterpiece of cinema. So this whole argument that I saw going on in this thread, this is something that I've seen before online, and it kind of drives me nuts. With people who don't like a particular movie or book or whatever, is just because they don't like the movie, they have to try to spin like these weird fake narratives about how the movie isn't really as good as what you think it is, or it didn't really perform as well as it should, or as well as you think it did, despite all the facts to the contrary. I saw a very similar argument once with Frank Herbert's Dune. Someone was arguing how terrible the book was, and it was a really bad read, and people were counter-arguing it, and they made a statement, the only reason the publisher took the book on, and it was a publisher that, did car manual books, they took it on because nobody else wanted it. What does that tell you? So I just gave the counter argument. Look, if you don't like the book, that's totally fine. But you cannot deny that Dune was and is a huge hit for a sci-fi novel and has been very influential. And that's kind of what their argument was. They're trying to, diminish the influence of Dune despite all the evidence. And then after I kind of made that comment, they kind of, they actually responded in a way that I think they saw what they were kind of. I don't think they realized what they were arguing, and they kind of saw the light of day when I put it in that perspective. Like, it's fine if you don't like the book, but you can't deny how influential the book was and how big of a fan base the book has. And so it's the same thing with Blade Runner 2049. So I'm just going to knock off point by point. I distilled the argument down. So the first argument, this film doesn't have any kind of following and has been forgotten. That's totally untrue because right off the bat, Denis Villeneuve as a filmmaker has a fan base and has a following. And most people who like Denis Villeneuve's films, they like Blade Runner 2049. So just by that aspect alone, it has a following. This movie does have a following, and a pretty big one. And it has not been forgotten. People were talking about it before Dune came out, and there's been articles talking about it. I've talked about it on my channel. Other channels have talked about it. So and he's even talking about it himself on Twitter. So no way, the movie has not been forgotten. And then this one, if you liked Blade Runner 2049, it was only because the marketing implanted that idea in your mind. Now, that's just pure speculation on his part. There's no way in the world you could prove that unless you were omnipotent and you could scan and read people's minds. But there's no way you could know that. And I think it's pretty pretentious to actually say that, to tell someone what they really think. I mean, I didn't, see any of the marketing for this movie. I'd seen the trailer, that's it. And I actually went in expecting this movie to be crap. Because when I heard about they were going to make a sequel to Blade Runner, I thought, they've done this so many times, it never works. Won't they just leave it alone? And I went in with that frame of mind and thinking, I don't think this is going to be very good. Went in and the movie blew me away. And this film and Arrival were the two films that completely sold me on Denis Villeneuve. And after I seen this movie and I heard he was doing Dune, I knew Dune was going to be good and I wasn't going to be disappointed with that film. So those two arguments knocked off. And the last one, it bombed on Blu-ray and DVD sales. Well, I've already provided evidence to the contrary. It did not bomb on DVD and Blu-rays. There's articles out there saying how it found its second life on that market. And as for how it bombed on streaming, I don't know how you can know that. They don't release those numbers. How could you find those numbers out? I don't know. I asked them to provide those kind of metrics. No one ever did. So, they're just pulling it right out of their ass. So, I mean, if you don't like Blade Runner 2049, That's fine if you don't think it's a good movie. But you can't deny that it does have a following and that the movie did find its second life on DVD and Blu-ray sales. So those are just the facts. And I don't know why you would try to argue that. I mean, if you don't like the movie, that's fine. But to spin this false narrative, I think is really bizarre. And I see this happen with a lot of things. And it always drives me up the wall when I see it. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one. I'd like to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you all in helping this channel grow. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded.